Hi, y'all, and welcome to tonight's live stream. Well, we just finished the 8th full day of Karen Reed's trial, and we are seeing an absolute war breakout over Jennifer McCabe's memory and which version of her story the jury should believe. In this stretch of the trial, the defense tore into inconsistencies between what Jen McCabe said in court and what she told Trooper Proctor when he investigated this case, or what she told the grand jury when it looked at this case. For many of these things, individually, they don't really matter all that much. It's when you add them up and when you ask the jury whether or not she's credible, that's when this becomes important. The defense wants to paint a picture of Jen McCabe as someone who either forgot a lot or shaped her own story to fit what she wanted everyone to believe. So she failed, for example, to mention a phone call to her sister, the homeowner at the center of the case, of the home that's at the center of the case. And she insisted she did not coordinate her story with family or with friends, even though she admitted to texting in a group chat with key witnesses like her sister and her brother-in-law, as well as Carrie Roberts. The defense pushed really hard at her timeline, her ever-changing timeline, and even on her use of the word nefarious. You'll hear a little clip from that tonight. And her decision to stop answering federal agents' questions in mid-interview. They also raised the issue of 7 pocket dials to John O'Keefe in less than 20 minutes, and none of them showed up in her phone extraction. So as they dug deeper, a theme emerged for the defense. Does Jennifer McCabe really remember things this poorly, or is there something else going on? That's the crux of the defense case, because of course they believe Karen Reed did not back her vehicle into her boyfriend John O'Keefe and leave him to die in the snow outside 34 Fairview. They believe she dropped him off at a party. He went inside 34 Fairview, and the people inside killed him, and he was left in the snow after that. Karen Reed, they figure, was just a byproduct, somebody who got framed. So the prosecution, in response, played some clips from Karen Reed herself, trying to redirect the jury's focus to Karen's own words, to issues where she herself may be vulnerable. These were pieces from interviews that Karen Reed gave. But those clips don't hit as hard as the earlier ones did. They were okay, but they weren't really impactful in the case. So kind of the bottom line would be that today was really messy. And for a witness the prosecution is counting on heavily, messy might be a problem. So special shout out to the first 5 in our chat tonight: Loretta Powell, Susan D78, Bama Queen, Michael Lalonde, and Oklahoma Gigi. If you are one of our members, we have something brand new for you tonight. I'm sure you see it in the chat. We have a brand new emoji. Let me add it to the stage. I'm going to show you. This is actually original, completely designed by our very own Marlon. I'm trying to find where I have that. Okay, where would that be? There it is. Okay. Here we go. By our very own moderator, Marlon. We have a couple of mods here on the channel. mamapinks, Marlon, so grateful to them. Let me show you what Marlon has designed for you to enjoy. This is the newest emoji for members. One of the best things our members get to do is use these completely original pieces of artwork that Marlon himself draws. He's quite the artist. So he's given you some context. The new emoji we are calling Exhibite because this is Chloe the dog is being depicted here. And of course, the taillight is one of the central issues in the case because it has to do with whether or not Karen Reed backed her car or whether she was framed by Trooper Proctor and other people who were trying to frame her for the murder of her boyfriend. So at Zibite, you'll see on the right there, that's what the emoji looks like, and you'll see it in the chat. And then, of course, you've also got kind of the broader picture so you can see what it's like. It's really fantastic. I know everybody will love using that. So thank you, Marlon, for doing that. It'll be a lot of fun. All right, so let's get started talking about what happened today, because it was quite the day. And I want to get started by showing you some video clips from today, and we can talk about what we're seeing and what happened today at trial. Got so many different windows open. I'm trying to figure out exactly which one I want to go to next for you. Okay, so what we're going to start with is Jennifer McCabe's cell phone. Now, a huge point by the defense, and they have only just begun to talk about butt dials, because there are two more witnesses who had an enormous problem created by what they say is butt dials, conversations or calls between people that for some reason didn't go through. They appeared to connect, but no one will admit actually having made the call. Now with Jennifer McCabe's, she has multiple calls that were made to John O'Keefe that were missed. She says she didn't make those phone calls. She also has a call to her sister, and she says she didn't make that phone call either, or if she did, that it certainly never went through. So even though it was over 30 seconds. So let's get into that. These are Jen McCabe's discussion about her butt dials. She says she made no less than 7 to John O'Keefe when he was supposed to come into the party.
I was texting him. I think I put my phone in my pocket. I think I inadvertently maybe have called him.
What did you call it at the last hearing?
I believe I called it a butt dial.
And it's not just one butt dial, correct?
There could be multiple, yes.
7 butt dials in the course of 19 minutes, less than 20 minutes, correct?
That evening, I wasn't paying attention to butt dials or calls. I was going back and forth, listening to music, being with family. So if I inadvertently called his phone, I did.
Not inadvertently called him once, 7 times, correct? According to you.
According to the record.
And we only know about these calls because you're looking at an extraction of John O'Keefe's phone, correct?
Correct, but I also turned over my phone, so you could have gotten all of that off of my phone as well.
And you're well aware that an extraction was done on your phone, and not one of those butt dials appears on your phone extraction, correct? Objection.
Are you aware of that?
I am not aware of that.
So if you had...
Stop it there. So it's not just that these calls were made and she denies making them. It's also that they disappeared from the log of phone calls made on her phone. So when the phone extraction was done from her phone, she voluntarily turned her phone over to law enforcement. It didn't show these phone calls, but when they looked at John O'Keefe's phone, then they were able to see them. So the defense has made a great deal of ground by talking about the fact that Jennifer McCabe made these phone calls and now won't actually even admit that she made the phone calls. She, in fact, denies, well, you'll hear it right here.
Missed calls, 7 missed calls, that's at least 14 interactions, double it, because you got to make the call, then you got to end the call. 14 interactions with your phone for a single missed call. I'm sorry, for 7 missed calls.
It could be, yes.
And your testimony is, you don't remember making a single one of those calls to John O'Keefe between 12:29 and 12:50, correct?
I do not remember making those calls, no.
As you sit here, do you deny making those calls between 12:29 and 12:50 to John O'Keefe?
Oh, I'm not denying that, no. It was.
So part of the question here is, why does it really matter? So what if she made these phone calls? Why does she bother to deny them? Does it hurt her in some way to have made these phone calls? After all, they were unanswered. It seems like that could go toward the Commonwealth's case. The Commonwealth wants to say that he was killed when he was hit by Karen Reed's car. How does her making unanswered phone calls to John O'Keefe make that any less possible? I don't fully understand why exactly she denies it, but it does look funny, especially when there are so many of them. Now, I want to add to the stage I guess I have to remove that one first. add this one to the stage. There is Exhibite, our new emoji. I love that. And let's take a look. These are the phone calls. I made a little chart for you just because this is how my mind works, that shows the communications between Jennifer McCabe and John O'Keefe. Well, specifically Jennifer to John O'Keefe. And at 12:14 and at 12:18, she called John O'Keefe and they actually spoke on the phone. So they actually communicated and talked about the fact that he was trying to find the location of 34 Fairview. He was coming to the party. One of the stranger ones is the 12:29 call. It was either a missed call or it was a 7-second call. Now, according to the defense in the questioning today, that 12:29 call actually lasted for 7 seconds. So that isn't truly a missed call, but Jennifer McCabe says she didn't make that call. She didn't talk to him. It was just a missed call. And then you see the missed calls keep going. 12:41, there are two, 12:43, 12:46, 12:47, and 12:50. The next time she begins texting is after Karen Reed calls her to tell her John O'Keefe is missing and they're looking for him, or she wants to go looking for him. So at 4:59, Jennifer texts John O'Keefe saying, Karen is worried. We need to find you. Naturally, there's no answer. At this time, John O'Keefe is in the front yard at 34 Fairview. At 5:04, she texts again, please answer so I know you're okay. So that is, I have to say, a lot of missed phone calls. That is just a bunch. I can't really explain or understand that 12:29 one. It seems like that almost has to have been a phone call. It's hard to understand how that could just be a 7-second call and yet only be a missed call, because that just doesn't make a lot of sense. But in any event, we'll pull that out and let's keep going with our testimony.
Chaotic morning, I remembered the waterfall, Julie, then Tom Beatty, calling to
voicemail?
I'm not sure. All I can tell you is I never spoke to my sister Nicole that morning prior to waking her up.
Okay, so here is just a very bizarre missing piece of information. She called her sister that morning. So she gets this call from Karen Reed, and Karen Reed says, John is missing. And she makes several phone calls that morning, 2 of which she remembers, 2 of which she acknowledges, but several she doesn't. One, and by far the most important one she doesn't remember, is that she called her sister that morning and it was a connected phone call for 38 seconds. But she says they didn't talk and she didn't wake her sister up, didn't even talk to her until later in the morning when law enforcement said, we're all out here on the lawn with John O'Keefe's body. Go inside and wake up your sister and her husband and bring them out here, because that was her sister who owned the house there at 34 Fairview, along with her brother-in-law, Brian Albert. Nicole and Brian were the homeowners. So after Karen Reed called Jen McCabe early that morning to say John was missing, she says she did not talk to Nicole until an hour later when she woke her up at law enforcement's request. And why? Why would she call her sister, Nicole Albert? Granted, well, first of all, she does not yet know that John O'Keefe is in the front yard. She has no way of knowing that because they haven't discovered the body yet. And then secondly, why would she wake Nicole up? Because according to Jennifer McCabe, John O'Keefe never entered the party. According to everybody at the party there at 34 Fairview, John O'Keefe never came in. So why would she call her sister? And why would she fail to mention that particular call when she's talking about the call she made that morning between the time Karen Reed called her and the time she and Karen left to go look for John O'Keefe?
You do acknowledge that you made a phone call at 5:07 to Julie Albert. I'm sorry, to Nicole Albert, your sister, over at 34 Fairview in those early morning hours, right?
Yes, I learned after. When I'm first being questioned, it's days after. It was a chaotic morning. I remembered the waterfall, Julie, then Tom Beatty. Calling to my sister wasn't as important ingrained in my mind at that point. No.
And then you testified at a grand jury, not hours or days later, You testified at a grand jury months later, correct?
Correct.
And at that grand jury, you also left out the fact that you contacted your sister, correct?
There's nothing nefarious. I remembered who I called. I didn't go back and look at phone records.
I didn't say it was nefarious. Why would you use the word nefarious?
Because there's nothing about me calling my sister that is nefarious, and I feel like you're insinuating it might be, and it's not.
Did you use that word because it sounds nefarious?
No, I just used the word because I think that's how you're trying to portray something that is nothing.
Or did you use that word because you think that's how it's coming across? That's nefarious.
No.
Without contacting 34 Ferry.
No, not at all.
Were you calling your sister's phone to alert her of something? Is that why you called?
So you can see how the defense is trying to use this phone call to suggest she is entirely correct. They are insinuating that something was going on. In fact, his very next question is, were you trying to alert her of something? Is that why you called? So clearly he is. I thought she handled that question pretty well when she kept saying, no, it's, I think you're trying to portray it as something nefarious when it's really nothing. But the problem is she kept contradicting earlier statements. For example, what she had said to Trooper Proctor during the interviews, what she had said to the grand jury. Here's another example related to what she had said about whether Karen Reed's SUV was still outside in front of the house at 12:45 in the morning.
No, I saw what I just read. I don't remember my exact words of every testimony, but I did just read that, yes.
And in fact, what you said back in June of 2023, quote, I don't know if it's my last text or if I did one more. Yeah, 12:45, hello, because they were still there, period, correct?
That's a part of what I said.
And then the question was, so the dark SUV was still outside the house at 12:45, answer at 12:45.
And then I said, I think, my husband and I, so there's more to that conversation.
McCabe, what I read you is what the transcript indicates. You said on June 8th, 2023, correct?
So, can you answer that? Is that correct?
That I saw it at that time?
Ask the question again. Mr.
Sure. That what you testified to in June of 2023 was you saw the SUV for the last time at 12:45. That's what you said, at least back then.
That's part of what I said.
I don't know if that's my last text or if I did one more. Yeah, 12:45, hello, because they were still there. Question, so the dark SUV was still outside outside the house at 12:45, answer at 12:45. That's what you actually testified to in June 2023.
That's what that says, correct.
Did you use that?
Let's stop it there. And so what you got is a witness who frankly was doing, I think, better than last time. But I don't think any witness could withstand Alan Jackson for very long. And after a sustained period of time, she became more and more difficult for her to explain away some of the inconsistencies. That just became more and more difficult as it went on. I want to say I'm so glad, Michael, that your lab work went well, and I'm delighted you've been a member for 13 months. Thank you very much. And thank you to Stephen Lennon. Appreciate that very much. I'm calling from New Zealand or tuning in from New Zealand. Thank you. All right, so I'm going to move it ahead just a little bit. Because I can see there's a little bit of an artifact. So let's stop right there. The next is going to be a contradiction between what Jennifer McCabe told Trooper Proctor about why Karen Reed came to Jennifer McCabe's house that morning. Because what happened was Karen Reed, according to her, actually Karen Reed's boyfriend's niece called, and Karen Reed was in the background. They talked twice, and Karen Reed then drove over to Jennifer McCabe's house, and they set out to look for John O'Keefe. They first went back to John O'Keefe's house to see if maybe he was somewhere in the house and Karen had somehow missed him. And then they went to 34 Fairview, where they actually found his body in the snow. But there was a contradiction between what she told Proctor about why Karen Reed came to her house. Apparently, what Trooper Proctor wrote down was that Jennifer said, she told Karen, come on over to my house, and then the two of us can look for him. But now Jennifer McCabe says that it was Karen's idea, that it was not something she suggested. It's not honestly that important a point, except for what it reveals about whether or not a witness is being truthful, and perhaps about Trooper Proctor's kind of botched investigation. There's another battle too about when Karen Reed told Jennifer McCabe about the broken taillight on Karen Reed's car. Now, Trooper Proctor wrote down that Jennifer McCabe said Karen Reed mentioned this to her after they went to One Meadows. The weird thing about that, though, the thing that's difficult to explain, is that Jennifer McCabe has said her husband said, don't take Karen Reed's car because it's got a broken taillight. So the question is, if Jennifer McCabe doesn't know that there's a broken taillight and Karen Reed has just arrived outside her house, how then does Jennifer's husband, this is getting confusing with all the people. I hope I can explain this clearly enough. Let's do this. Jennifer and Matt, husband and wife. Jennifer is at her home when she receives the call from Karen Reed. Karen Reed saying, John's missing. Jennifer says, come on over to my house, Karen. So Karen comes over to Jennifer's house. Does Jennifer yet know that there's a broken taillight on Karen Reed's car? Not necessarily, but Trooper Proctor wrote down that, in fact, Jennifer McCabe first found out about it after she and Karen left her house and went back to the house where Karen was staying with her boyfriend. That was the first time she knew about it. So there would be no explanation for why Jennifer McCabe's husband said, you can't take Karen's car, it's got a broken taillight. That wouldn't really make sense. So Jennifer McCabe is saying today that she knew already that Karen Reed had a broken taillight, and that would explain why her husband knew about it and said, don't take that car. So there, hopefully that was clear. All right, let's listen to a little bit of it.
No.
Ms. McCabe, during that same interview, you also told Trooper Proctor that while driving back to One Meadows after you had been picked up by Karen at your house, while driving back toward One Meadows, that's actually when Miss Reed told you she had broken her taillight, correct?
Miss Reed told me in the morning at my house.
Okay. I know that's what you're testifying to now. Mm-hmm. What I'm asking is, what did you tell Michael Proctor on January 29th? What's freshest in your mind?
That she had told me she had a cracked taillight when she called me.
You didn't tell him that she indicated she noticed her taillight had been damaged on the drive back to One Meadows after she got to your house?
She mentioned it then as well, but she also had told me when she was on the phone, that's why my husband yelled out that we shouldn't be driving with a cracked taillight.
But in fact, you did not tell Trooper Proctor that story. What you told him was she told you on the drive back to One Meadows after having picked you up, correct?
I told him she told me in the morning and on the drive back.
So if he didn't write that in his report, it's obviously incorrect. Gotcha.
It looked
Throughout, the attorney for Karen Reed, Alan Jackson, would imply or would just go right up to the question. So Trooper Proctor was lying, so what he wrote down was wrong, and the judge would sustain an objection. It became really testy between the judge and Alan Jackson later on. We'll see a little bit of that. I mean, they did it mostly in sidebar, but you will actually see some of the tension that arose as a result of that. So let's keep listening.
like, yes.
And what you told Trooper Proctor on that day is that you, quote, saw a crack in it. Is that right?
I believe I said it was broken and cracked and it was missing pieces.
Isn't it true that what you actually said is, we got out at John's house and looked at the taillight, back right taillight, saw a crack in it, correct?
I said that I saw it and it was cracked and it was missing pieces.
As you sit here today, are you telling this jury that you deny saying to Trooper Proctor, you saw a crack in it? Are you denying that statement?
I'm not denying it.
So you could have told him that.
He asked me multiple times different questions. I spoke to him at my house, and then he had called me. So maybe one time I said it had a crack in it, and another time I said it was broken and missing pieces.
So it's very possible that that's how you described it on the 29th, Ms. McCabe. It had a crack in it, right?
And missing pieces.
I'm not asking you to finish my sentence. I'm asking you, is it possible that that's what you told him that day? It had a crack in it. Yes or no?
Yes, that was one way. Mm-hmm.
Do you recall?
So throughout, the point of the cross-examination was to show that Jim McCabe either lied or forgot about really important things. In other words, maybe even made some of them up after the fact. So often Alan Jackson took it pretty far and the judge slapped him down, but she did it in a way that is very damaging for an attorney. I want you to watch a little bit about it, and I'll talk about why it's particularly damaging. Here are a few examples of the judge instructing the jury that he had done something wrong.
Telling Trooper Tully that you had never met Elizabeth Proctor or Michael Proctor prior to September 2023.
No.
Would it refresh your recollection if you saw a copy of Lieutenant Tully's report?
I don't need to see the report because I know I told him that I met him on January 29th when he came to my house.
So again, Trooper Tully wrote, you never met Trooper Proctor before September 2023. That would be an error by him, correct?
Object to ask for an instruction.
So again, that is sustained. Ladies and gentlemen, I instructed you on previous questions regarding the same type of thing, whether another witness is lying or not. Disregard the question and move on, Mr. Jackson.
So the reason that's so damaging is because she's saying in front of the jury that what just happened here shouldn't have happened. I've instructed, and she's actually telling them that question you just heard, ignore that. Now, the reason she is entitled to do that is because anytime an attorney makes a statement in a courtroom, that statement is not evidence. The evidence comes from the witnesses, from the documents that are presented, from the exhibits, those things. But the evidence is not what the attorney says in making the argument or in asking the questions. Now, in this particular case, the judge, this has been going on for a while with the judge getting more upset at the comments that are being made by Alan Jackson. And so she's now actually telling the jury to disregard his question. The problem is that attorneys work very, very diligently to build credibility with the jury. That's something you begin from the moment voir dire starts, from the moment you are meeting the jury. You're attempting to make yourself very credible so that if you tell them something is going to happen in opening statement, it actually happens. So that if you ask a question, there's a background to it. If you impeach a witness, there's a document that contradicts what the witness says. That's something you're working on the whole time. So when the judge tells the jury, disregard what was just said, that's, I've told you before, don't pay any attention to that, it begins to undermine that credibility. I'm not even saying that the judge is wrong here because she has made this more than once. She has already made this point more than once in a more subtle way, but she is making it more and more openly. And let's watch a couple more times. Give it a second.
Ladies and gentlemen, I instructed you on previous questions regarding the same type of thing, whether another witness is lying or not. Disregard the question and move on, Mr. Jackson.
If you had told Trooper Tully, Lieutenant Tully, that you had never met Trooper Proctor before September of 2023, would that have been a truthful or an untruthful statement?
I object. I'd like to be seen.
Okay. Come to sidebar, please. Next question.
May I? Did
I cut out
Trooper Tully, did you tell Trooper Tully, quote, you had never met Elizabeth Proctor or Michael Proctor prior to September 2023, end quote?
I had never met Elizabeth
That's not my
Proctor
question.
prior. Well, there was a,
Did you tell Lieutenant Tully, that quote?
if I can break that quote up, because it's two thick parts.
No, you can't.
So
my
this has
question
been
is my
asked
question.
and answered. Move on, Mr. Jackson.
Do you deny, as you sit here, telling Lieutenant Tully that quote that I just read? Do you deny it?
Sustained. Move along. The question's been answered.
So throughout the day, we saw exchanges between Alan Jackson and the judge where she was telling the jury, okay, disregard that question, because in her opinion, he was asking a question that was inappropriate, that he was not entitled to ask. And so she was trying to stop that by making it painful for him to do that, by creating some kind of consequence for that. Now, I thought some of the best cross-examination of the day by Alan Jackson related to why Jennifer McCabe, if she truly was worried about her friend, John O'Keefe, and why he had not shown up, why didn't she go get the very nearest first responder to give him CPR? Let me pull this out and we'll talk for a minute. So if she was concerned, like 911, quick, get somebody here to help, there was a first responder inside the home where John O'Keefe's body was on the front lawn. Why didn't she just go in and wake up her brother-in-law, the Boston police officer, and get him out on the front lawn trying to help John O'Keefe? Why go through the process of calling 911, waiting for 911 to call? Why would you not just go straight in and ask Brian Albert to do it? And for that matter, there were also a lot of questions about why Brian Albert did not wake up with all of the commotion going on out there. And Alan Jackson did a very good job portraying it, sort of describing it. And there were the vehicles and there were the lights and EMTs running around and Karen Reed screaming. And all of these things are going on. And yet no one comes out of 34 Fairview to see what is going on the front lawn. Now, there was a decent redirect from the Commonwealth on that. No one apparently, I don't know if they were exceptionally quiet or what, but no one came out of any of the houses around there. It was about 6 a.m. So, and it was a blizzard. Nobody was expecting to go anywhere that day, but still no one came out. It is kind of surprising that absolutely no one came out. So there was one occasion, I felt like, where Jennifer McCabe managed to slam one home. I felt like she had a pretty strong answer on this one. I'm going to play that for you. I want to welcome Astrid Zucker and Baba D, who are new members. Welcome. We are delighted to have you. Let me add to the stage. There we go. Give it a second.
You also indicated that you have never refused to speak to the police, any law enforcement officer in this case, correct?
I've spoken when but asked to, yes.
But in point of fact, when you were approached by the 2 law enforcement agents who were not connected to Massachusetts State Police or to Canton PD, you suspended that interview and refused to answer further questions, correct?
I welcomed them in my house, sat with them, and then I stopped, and then I met with them a few times after, and I answered all their questions that they asked. I helped clear up some misconceptions that they had been told. And as you know, I know they're no longer investigating. So I think I helped them well.
And you're obviously well aware that in that first interview, you stopped the interview cold and refused to answer further questions, correct?
I said I'm going to stop and I'm going to seek some counsel, yes.
So that I thought was pretty effective because she managed to get in that the investigation, which has been mentioned here and there, is closed, that the investigation is no longer going. Now, I don't think she deserves credit for shutting down the investigation or for being the one who gave information that caused it to be shut down. But that was a point that she did get in as a result of the question that he asked. And I thought that was a score for the day on Jennifer McCabe's side. For the most part, it was just a very, very tough day for Jennifer McCabe. But for purposes of Karen Reed's side, I thought some of the most important cross-examination had to do with the allegations that Jennifer McCabe and the Albert family were coordinating through text messages and meetings at ways to get their story straight. The defense says the reason for doing that is to protect the real killer or killers who were inside 34 Fairview. Here's an example.
Days following January 29th, in the events of January 29th, 2022, were you and your family coordinating your versions of the events that occurred on that morning?
No.
Were you and your family coordinating some sort of damage control in terms of the language that your family would use to the public, to the press, to law enforcement?
No.
Did you and your family use a group chat, you and part of your family use a group chat to text each other to coordinate your communications with either the press or the public or law enforcement or family or friends?
I have multiple group chats with family and friends.
You had a very specific group chat that included yourself, Nicole, your sister, Brian Albert, and Matt McCabe, correct?
Yes, I did.
It'll be a 5-second delay. Give it a second.
That is a textbook example, what we've just seen, of witnesses colluding with one another about a subject matter that's under investigation, correct?
I move for an instruction.
All right, jurors, disregard that comment completely. Disregard that question.
Your Honor, may we approach? May I, Your Honor?
Okay, there's a good example where I would say, first of all, that the judge and the Commonwealth they've obviously discussed this at sidebars, and the attorney for the Commonwealth stands up and says, look, I'd like an instruction on that because that's not an appropriate question. By instruction, he means I'd like you to tell the jury to disregard that question because the question, that's a textbook example, what we've just seen of witnesses colluding with one another. That's not an appropriate question, says to the jury. And the judge does that. Alan Jackson is upset about that. And Alan Jackson says, may we approach? And then they have more discussion about what probably has been going on in those sidebars for all this time. And we just aren't privy to all of it. But they are discussing, are these questions appropriate? How should the judge deal with these questions in front of the jury? If the judge believes they're inappropriate, what's the best way to communicate that to the jury? So that's what you're seeing right there. You're seeing kind of a glimpse behind the curtain into what's happening at those sidebars. So that whole discussion about why exactly they were communicating with each other in text messages about this, the defense wants to say that's all inappropriate, that witnesses really shouldn't be talking to one another. I think that's a hard sell. These are family members, but that is the argument being made. Let's listen to a little more.
Thank you. In the text that we just saw, you were colluding with other witnesses, percipient witnesses in this case through those text messages, were you not?
I was not.
You were organizing your statements to the police based on what you overheard and what you heard during Kerry Roberts' interview with the Massachusetts State Police, weren't you?
No, I was not.
Now, notice there's a subtle difference between the two questions. The question she did not allow, the Judge Canoni did not allow, is that's a textbook example, what we've just seen of witnesses colluding with one another. Okay, so that she's not allowed to answer because how would she know whether it's a textbook example? What she is allowed by the judge to answer is, in the text that we just saw, you were colluding with other witnesses. Percipient means those who perceived what happened, those who, eyewitnesses basically, or those who had knowledge about what happened through those text messages. So on the one side, it was, this is a textbook example. And the other question was, you were colluding with these witnesses, weren't you, in these text messages? That was permitted without any instruction to the jury. And she denied that she had anything to do with it or that she was in any way colluding with them. But there were a lot of text messages. We will have to do those another night because there really were that many that we'll have to do that. I want to thank Bethany for gifting 5 Lawyer League memberships. Thank you. Our next members only is next week, in fact. So perfect timing Welcome to Astrid and Baba D and Spring 20, who's a new member. Welcome to all of y'all. All right, and thank you, Bethany. All right, let's keep listening.
Told them some of the things that Kerry Roberts said, yes.
And you were happy about what she said after you had created this timeline with her, correct?
The timeline had nothing to do with it.
But it was certainly chronologically. Her interview with the police was after this timeline had already been created between you and Kerry Roberts.
Yes, we both put down what had happened so we would remember.
And then once she was interviewed, you were responding to the rest of the group. She's telling them everything, meaning everything we just crafted in this timeline, right?
No, I meant she was telling them everything. She was telling her personal opinions about Miss Reed.
So throughout one of the difficulties with the defense argument is while you got all of these family members, and Jennifer McCabe is related to the Alberts, and most of the people there at the party at 34 Fairview were related. You've got a few people who weren't, Kerry Roberts being one. Although she had longstanding ties with some of the people, particularly John O'Keefe, for example, she was not actually a member of the family. So the defense position is that knowing that, Jen McCabe came alongside Kerry and tried to work on what her testimony would be. So they made a timeline together. That way they would be sure to have the exact same story, and Jen McCabe could make sure that Kerry Roberts told the story the family wanted told. That's the defense argument. And in this particular case, she and her husband, Matt, are listening in on the interview that police are making of Kerry Roberts because it's happening at the McCabe's house for some reason. And so they're listening in on that, and they're texting to family members saying, hey, she's telling them everything. So the defense is saying, when you say telling them everything, you mean everything you wanted told. And the way she knew that was you all sat down together and you prepared this timeline. One of the additional points the defense made is that Jennifer McCabe actually went to a Sergeant Lank's house. Now, he was, I believe, with Canton police, and she went there that day, the day after or the day of John O'Keefe's death. And she first revealed that months afterwards, not right away. She didn't admit that she had done that right away. After the defense pointed out, look, GPS records show she went over to the home of somebody who's in law enforcement, and she's not admitting that or saying anything about that. And it kind of expanded from there. She went there, and in fact, it turns out she went to 34 Fairview, the scene of the accident first. She had Kerry Roberts with her. So, and then it turns out they also went to Jennifer McCabe's house first. She says she didn't remember they went to her house first, and she didn't remember, at least initially, that they had gone by 34 Fairview just to kind of look over the scene. And then they went to Sergeant Lank's house. Now, she says this had nothing to do with an interview. This was not anything to do with what had happened. They were just dropping Kerry Roberts' daughter off. That's all they were doing. They didn't have any, they weren't trying to have an interview or to get their side made. That all they were doing was dropping off a kid or picking up a kid. I forgot which one it is. And the story was different depending on who you asked. But let's listen to this testimony.
January 30th, 2022.
I was asked if I had gone to Michael Lank's house, and I had, to be honest, I had completely forgotten because those days were just a complete blur. But then I remembered that after we left Meadows Ave, we did drop her daughter off at Michael Lank's.
All right. Do you recall ever seeing a document, seeing something that indicated that you were actually a piece of paper, a document, a record, anything indicating that you were seen at Michael Lank's house through GPS location data forms?
Did I ever see a record of that?
Correct. Did Lieutenant show?
No, he didn't show me a record.
He just asked you about it.
He just asked me.
Did he tell you during that course of that interview that he had been provided with GPS data records indicating that you went to Michael Lank's house? Before that interview on May 10th with Lieutenant Tully, this is preceding your testimony last year.
Okay.
Had you ever reported that you went to Michael Lank's house, Sergeant Lank's house, on January 30th to anybody?
No, to be honest, I completely forgot about it. My memory is we did drive from One Meadows. I know what this piece of paper says. I'm telling you that just my memory is we left Meadows and went down Fairview and then went to Michael Lank's. But this paper is saying we stopped at my house first. I don't remember that. But
all of
again,
you-
I was in shock.
Sorry.
So a
All of
lot
you-
of things from that day are foggy. Certain things, certain details I may have forgotten.
And all of your testimony over the last several days is based on that memory that you just described to these jurors, correct?
There are certain things I'll never forget, correct?
So that was extremely, she really opened herself up there by saying that there were certain details, that the day was foggy, that she was in shock. A lot of things from that day are foggy, she actually said. And certain things and certain details she may have forgotten. So she kind of opened herself up, and he jumped right in and said, and everything you told the jury is based on that foggy details you've forgotten in shock day, right? It's based on the memory you're describing now, which isn't all that clear. So that gave him a lot of room to argue, and he did it more than once. But now, before we get into the prosecution clips, which will be our last little bit, I saw, first of all, Kit Kat, welcome. Glad to have you as a new YouTube member. I thought Jan's question was really good about the judge limiting AJ's questioning because he was not entitled to ask a particular question and asking why not. And it's going to depend a little bit on the question. Let me pull this out so we can talk. But that's a really interesting question because I think it depends on the question very much. The questions where he was asking more or less in different words sometimes, but he was asking things like, well, if Trooper Proctor wrote this, that was incorrect, wasn't it? And he didn't always say lie. He didn't say Trooper Proctor lied or you lied. He said, if Trooper Proctor wrote this, it would be incorrect. And the judge didn't allow those sorts of questions. And the reason being, I think that she felt like the question of whether or not it was a lie, whether or not it was a contradiction, would be reserved for the jury. It may also be that the particular report isn't in evidence yet. I don't know the actual answer to that. And so she may have been wanting him to actually lay an official foundation for it. But she went further than that. She actually made statements to the jury and said, disregard that question, because she believed the question was suggesting to the jury something. And that's where she felt like it was inappropriate. So that's why she was saying to the jury, don't take the question you just heard as if it's a fact. Don't assume that Trooper Proctor wrote that in his report and that it contradicts to what you just heard. You made the decision, jury, about that. Now, there were some other questions. For example, what was that last one we looked at? I thought it was a little more questionable. I'll have to go back and look at it. I can't remember. But I remember thinking that the judge instructing the jury on that, it was related to the form of the question, I felt like. And I didn't think it went all the way to the level of something where I would instruct the jury, the textbook example of collusion. That I felt like, granted, what would she know about whether it's a textbook example of collusion? This may be the very first time she ever colluded. So how would she know that this was a textbook example? I can see where the form of the question was incorrect. I don't know if I would have gone so far as to actually instruct the jury. And in fact, the jury allowed a pretty broad form of that question when it was phrased properly. So I thought maybe a possible solution might have been just to say, form incorrect, come up with ask the question differently, as she often says to the people. But that's a great question, Jan. All right, so let's take a listen to some of what the state did in response. Now, we've seen throughout the trial that whenever the state has kind of a difficult witness or a problem, they try to shore the witness up with a clip from Karen Reed's own voice so that they can say, okay, you may be having questions after the cross of that witness about, name the issue, Well, why don't we just ask Karen Reed herself? Because she spoke to numerous media outlets and said in her own words a lot of these things that the Commonwealth wants to prove. And they have very effectively used that. I thought the strongest was the ones related to her drinking and talking about how much she had to drink that night. So here they played some clips. I thought they were not as closely correlated or as strong, but throughout this, these have been things that the Commonwealth believes are really important. So let's take a listen. These were all statements Karen Reed made in the course of interviewing. Now that is really unusual. That just never happens. So it has created some problems for Karen Reed in this trial. In the first trial, the Commonwealth didn't use any of these, but they are making great use of these in this second trial. So let's listen.
Woman who was a mother.
To be clear, this is audio only, this first one. I think the second two are both video. So it starts and she said, there was a woman who was a mother to kids, and you can hear that.
To kids that were close to John's kids who lived very close to the outlets. In fact, when Jen was navigating John to the outlets when I was driving, she said, it's near Ashley's house. Ashley and John had hooked up prior to John and I dating.
So why obviously this would be important is the Commonwealth has suggested that Karen Reed was very upset and believed John O'Keefe was cheating on her, that she believed he was having an affair, multiple affairs, I don't really know. And that one of the things that set her off that night was the suggestion that when Jennifer McCabe gave directions, she gave directions, and according to Jennifer McCabe, she didn't do it on Ashley's name. She did it on Ashley's daughter's name. I believe it was Bella. She said, oh, it's near Bella's house. And the reason, Jim McCabe said, and Carrie Roberts mentioned that as well, was because John O'Keefe's niece, who lived with him and he was caring for, was friends with this girl, Bella. So John frequently drove the girls home, and he'd been to Bella's house many times, dropping her off, doing carpool, that kind of thing. So in this particular case, the mother to the kids was Ashley. And so the Commonwealth is suggesting this triggered Karen Reed when the way directions was given was, oh, it's near, and she heard in her mind Ashley's house, because Ashley was the woman he had hooked up with before he got together with Karen Reed. Now, Jennifer McCabe says, I didn't even mention Ashley. I mentioned Bella, the daughter, because that was how I was thinking he would know about it. So I don't know. It didn't seem all that directly related to Jim McCabe. It was a small point maybe in what Jim McCabe said. All right, let's listen to the next clip.
12A, please.
Two things. Either he's hurt himself and is incapacitated. He could be passed out on someone's couch, which is just weird. We're not on a campus. Everyone lives in their own home with children, or he's sleeping with someone. And there were multiple women in the neighborhood of Fairview that John had been with. And one of them very recently, before I started dating John.
So again, this is a suggestion from the Commonwealth that maybe Karen Reed felt like there was a rival. The reason John was missing had nothing to do with maybe he's lying in the front yard because she hit him the night before. Maybe what she's thinking is that he is having an affair. And that could cut both ways for the defense side. Maybe she's thinking that because she had nothing to do with killing him the night before. And so her mind immediately goes to he's with another woman. Or you could take it from the Commonwealth side, which is, hey, she has a lot of reason. She's showing some jealousy. She has a lot of reason to be upset.
Clip 16, please.
We'll backtrack later. Let's start at 34 Fairview. So who are you with? I'm with Jen McCabe and Carrie Roberts. And Carrie Roberts is 4. Ford Explorer. And I'm in the back, leaning over the front two seats. Carrie's driving and Jen's in the passenger seat. And I describe this to everyone, so you've probably heard this before, but John looked like a buffalo on the prairie. It was just a lawn and a heat that it wasn't a bush or a hydrant or a dog. It was a weird shaped lump at that time in those elements. And I was looking to find him on the side of the road. I was expecting I'd find him. And the fear of what I was going to see is the worst feeling I've ever experienced. The anticipation of what is awaiting me was as extreme a feeling. I wouldn't say it was as extreme a feeling as the grief of realizing what happened to him.
All right, let's take that out. So at this point, they started to introduce clip number 17. That was not introduced. They mentioned beforehand that the defense might want to add some clips to it, some portions to it, and there was a debate over that. So that may still be to come. I don't think 17 was ruled out, but they may decide they want to add some portions next before they actually play that for the jury. So as to that 16th one, I wasn't really clear on why that was offered. Maybe they thought, I'm really curious. Why do you think that was offered? That about the lump in the yard and how she was expecting she would find him. The fear of what she was going to see was the worst feeling she'd ever experienced, the anticipation. I mean, maybe what they want to do is argue that she was anticipating him being dead. She didn't think he was with someone he was having an affair with. She thought he was dead somewhere on the side of the road. And why? If he walked into the party, what on earth would make her think he's going to be dead on the side of the road? Why is she looking there at all? Maybe that's what they want to, but I wasn't totally clear on that. So if you have an idea, put that in the chat. I'm curious what your ideas are on why the Commonwealth played that, why they thought it was so important that they pulled it out and they wanted to play it following Jen McCabe's testimony. So I'm curious what y'all think about that. All right, Mildred has a good question. Or a good point. She's one of the things that Jennifer McCabe was asked about was why did you not go in at least to check on your sister and brother-in-law? I mean, there's a dead person in the front yard. Why doesn't law enforcement go in to check? And why don't you go in to check? Like, it's not necessarily the case that they're just fine and the yard is entirely separate. But maybe some crazed killer is running around killing people in the snowstorm and has killed the people inside the home and even left this one guy out on the road. Or near the road. That's a good point. I thought that was a good point made today by Alan Jackson in the cross-examination, Mildred. I agree with you. That was a really good point. All right. If you have some questions, let's go ahead and take those. If you would put question marks at the front of your question, it makes it way easier for me to spot your question in the chat. And let's see. Also saw that Michael Lalonde, thank you for the second super chat. I appreciate that very much and hope your medical things go well. Why say Buffalo Beach Nance wonders? And you might be right that may be the reason that it seemed kind of disrespectful the way it was being said by Karen Reed. Maybe that was it. All right, so I'm looking for question marks at the beginning. Are you going to do a timeline? Jazz asks. Yes, I am planning to do a timeline, and I've sort of started it with a little bit. It's so much more complex in this case than in other cases. There is a lot of detailed information about people calling back and forth. So I'm going to be working on that, but yes. All right. Bonbon asking, Brian Albert being a first responder and cop, how does he explain staying in the house once somebody woke him up? That is confusing. It'd be one thing to say, I slept through it. Already, that's a little surprising, although maybe you have blackout curtains and earplugs, I don't know. Maybe it's not all that loud, and in the middle of a snowstorm, the storm was enough to drown out any of the noise on the lawn. But once somebody wakes him up and there's there are a bunch of people out there. Why does he not go outside to look around? Maybe, I don't remember what he said in the first trial. Maybe he says, well, I didn't need to. By then, everybody had gone by the time I found out about it. Maybe that's what he says. Well, we will probably hear from him during the trial. I would expect the Commonwealth to put him up. But it is kind of odd. If nothing else, you would think he would be curious, that he would just want to know. I mean, it's his yard. All right. Coverage of redirect, Alexa Weasel says. So the only clips I have are the ones that I showed you tonight. Those are the clips I have for us tonight. Does the court not have to cite the sources of the video clips? They do. They put a little site up at the beginning and state where it comes from so that the jury will know. At the beginning part, they show that information on the slide. The only one I didn't see it for, well, I think I saw it actually. I think I saw it for all of them. I think they put that up each time. Okay, Scar Motley and me. After this trial, can we do another live where opposing opinion members come on and discuss viewpoints? That was really, really good. We did that last year after the Jennifer Dulos case. Thanks for reminding me, Scar Motley. That was that was really interesting. I totally agree with you. We actually had folks who are members of the channel. We had a members only. And I said, you know, if you believe, if you believe that Jennifer Dulos was not guilty, if you believe she was guilty, then, and you want 2 minutes, we'll just do a round robin. And everybody went through and gave their opinions. It was fascinating. It was also interesting to me to see how well y'all had followed the case and how much you knew. I learned a ton hearing your explanations for it. It was fantastic. So that's a really great idea, Scar Motley. I mean, this is a good case for that because there are differing opinions. Some cases, there tend to be a real uniformity of opinion. I think Lori Vallow Daybell's was maybe a little bit more like this, but some have more controversy. Maybe this one has a little too much controversy. I'll have to check with the mods and see what they think about that. All right, Deborah Smouse, didn't she let him off at the flagpole? Then how did she back up and hit him in the yard? Deborah asked. So I think she let him off. I think she was just past the flagpole by the time she let him off. And I believe that we will have some testimony. They got some new information looking at the vehicle and the black box in the vehicle. We don't have all that yet, but I think we will find out some more about what they say the exact movements of the car were, the acceleration and so forth, that when she backed into him, according to the Commonwealth. I think I skipped Camilla. Juliana asked, can Alan Jackson use Jen's statements to the troopers when he cross-examines those officers? So if she's already, I mean, the answer is he can use they can be asked because the jury knows what she said. So they can be asked, isn't it true that blah? And if Jen said not blah, then when they're asked the question, isn't it true? And they say, well, yes, that's absolutely true. There's a contradiction with what Jennifer McCabe said. Now, what he probably will not be permitted by Judge Canoni to do is to say, isn't it true that on May 2nd, Jennifer McCabe said X? Because they don't know that. And, you know, if Jennifer McCabe said X on May 2nd, was she lying? So probably from what the judges ruled so far, she's not going to allow the question to go that far. But she will allow them to say things that contradict what was said. For example, if Proctor testifies, he'll be asked, when did Karen Reed, according to Jennifer McCabe, when did Karen Reed tell her that the taillight was cracked? And he'll look at his notes and he'll say, why, it was after she arrived at One Meadows. And then because Jackson is Jackson, he will follow up and say, so it was not when it was not earlier than that. It wasn't in the first phone call. It wasn't when Karen Reed was first at her home before they went to One Meadows. Why, no, it was when she went to One Meadows. That was when she learned about it. So that sort of question will be asked. I think that's how it'll sort of play out in the courtroom. All right. Please do a poll. We won't do a poll tonight, Ruth, but we will do some more polls. Thank you for that suggestion. Kayla, why is Bev able to preside over this case if she has ties to the family? I think that, first of all, it's a small community and therefore relatively. I mean, so the people often have ties with each other. That's not going to be the touchstone for her being removed from the case. And in this particular case, I don't think she has direct ties to the family, and that she's not an actual relative or anything like that. There's also the relations that they would be looking at would not necessarily be to any and every witness. They're going to be looking at things like, do you have any relationship to John O'Keefe, the deceased? Do you have any relationship to Karen Reed, the defendant? So I think why. I don't think her ties are deep enough that they have alerted anything. Beth asking, is Alan Jackson at risk of alienating the jury since the judge keeps striking his questions over and over again? It might seem to them like he can't make his case by playing by the rules. Beth A., that's a real issue. And that was what I was mentioning earlier when I said that it is a big problem for an attorney to have to kind of be cut down or put down in front of the jury like that. And I think that's why at that one stage when we were playing the clip, he says, let's have a conference about that, and came back and asked a very similar question, slightly worded differently. Because I imagine he said, Judge, you can't do that. You can't call me down in front of the jury like that, because it's going to hurt my reputation with the jury. It's going to make them think they can't trust me, and I don't want that. I need very much for them to trust me and to believe what I have to say. So I do have one last thing I definitely want to show you tonight. I would like to categorically deny an allegation. I'm going to add this to the state. Wait, not that. That is not what I am categorically denying. I'm going to add this to the stage. Many of you know I have been completely open about my personal Diet Coke addiction. I have not in any way hidden that from you. I have been very clear about that problem, but I would like to deny this. Let me find, there we go. I deny being the YouTuber arrested after sneaking onto island to bring uncontacted tribe Diet Coke. Firmly deny that, completely deny that I am not the person who contacted this tribe to give them Diet Coke. So just wanted you to know, firmly deny that. Had nothing to do with that. Please. I was like, you've got to be kidding when I saw that. Like, wow, just wow. Other people maybe have the same problem I do, maybe even worse. And Marlon asking me to show the exhibit again. This is our brand new emoji, just in time for the Karen Reed trial. Created, this is totally original, hand-drawn by Marlon, our moderator. He created this. Let me make my picture a little smaller so you can see it better. There we go. Let me pull down that. Okay. So Marlon, thank you, is asking me to show the exhibit again. Let me pull that down so you can see everything. So there you have it on the left, sort of the bigger picture. And then on the right, you have the actual emoji that our members are able to use. One of the huge benefits of being a member, and we have a bunch of new ones tonight. Thank you to all the people who gifted Lawyer Lee memberships. One of the things you can do is throughout our chat, you can use these completely original emojis that were drawn by Marlon and that are part of the way you can communicate with each other in the chat. They're gorgeous, just like this one is. And they're beautifully drawn. They're really, and you'll see them featured in the outro that we do. A lot of the ones that, and maybe all of them just about, are featured in this outro that Marlon did for us. So you'll get to see all of them, but that's one of the huge perks of being a member. If you're not a member, you can easily join by hitting the join button down by the channel name just below this video where it says Lawyer Lee. If you're on your iPhone, you'll need to go in, instead of through the YouTube app, through Safari or through Chrome, one of the one of the browsers that you use, you'll need to go in that way. The iPhone isn't compatible with this for our channel. So, but we would love to have you, and be sure to turn on your gifted memberships if you haven't, because several people have given away some memberships tonight, and you might be the lucky winner. So I will see everybody on Monday night at 7 p.m. Eastern. And here is the outro I told you about. And thank you also to Mama Pinks, our other moderator. We have fantastic moderators, and I'm so grateful to them.